My favorite accomplishment that is not on there is that my wife Jackie and our 4 children are in Milwaukee, and and actually Michael and Tasha are godparents to our youngest son Gabe, who's 5, and what a blessing to be with them again, but to serve you together. Wow, just hey, thanks for coming to this workshop too. And there's handouts, but there's not enough for everybody. We'll post them online, okay? But you can take some notes, but the goal isn't to stare at a sheet of paper. Hopefully we can reflect and pray and press into the themes of this conference together. And what a great theme it is. Relationship. Relationship with Christ, relationship with one another. So we're going to reflect on that here. My last workshop was super interactive, and everybody was up and moving and talking and doing exercises. This one is not so much. I'm going to kind of go through a lot of stuff. I hope to make it personal, relatable, somewhat interactive. But since we have an hour, and I want to really get through a lot of content, but I just ask you to listen for those couple things that stand out to you, and take this, make it interactive by with the rest of the conference. At dinner time, as you discuss in your teams, at lunch and dinner. Be listening for those 1 or 2 things that the Holy Spirit really moves you to press into more. Maybe it's something that you like, maybe it's something you don't like, and sometimes that can be an invitation, right, to go into it more. But so we want to reflect together here on creating a culture of hospitality and relationship. And I want to just bait you with something first that we'll come back to later. I'm going to just ask you to fill in this. This is I'll tell you who said it later and how they finished the sentence. I think it's a great sentence. And it starts like this. The most important gift you can give someone is blank. The most important gift you can give someone is, well, how would you fill that in? Why don't you talk amongst yourselves. Fill that in. The most important gift you can give someone is... There's one right answer. Just kidding. All right. What are some answers? What do we hear? Yourself. Jesus Christ. Love.
Time.
Faith. Time. Awesome. It's good. It's a good sentence, right? Finish it a number of good ways. I'll come back to later. I'm just going to leave you hanging on that one. I'm going to leave you hanging. We'll come back to that. How about this? Mike set this up beautifully in his opening talk yesterday. He said, I think he asked you, what comes to mind when you hear the word hospitality? What were some words that first thoughts, what came to your mind? Just shout them out. We did this yesterday. Just welcoming. Service. Coffee. Cookies. Help. Open. Listening. Awesome. Conversation. Great. I think there's I was reflecting on the themes, creating a culture of relationship and hospitality. Hospitality, I think, is a good jumping off point. In my experience, and maybe it's yours too, I think there's a thin sense, a thin and a thick sense of hospitality. And they're both good, right? And I think it's easy to kind of, poke fun at okay, there's coffee and donuts and there. We're doing the ministry of hospitality. It's obviously more than that. But in my experience, parishes can, and I'm self-critical here as much as anything, can pride themselves on being, hospitality and the words welcoming and vibrant. I hear that a lot. We're a welcoming, vibrant parish. And, you know, we take hospitality really seriously. So to pick on my own experience a little bit, the experience of my wife and I moving into our community and going to our parish, I would say it was a pointed example of a thin sense of hospitality. A parish that was very, very happy with itself about how welcoming and how vibrant it was. And it is, at a certain, I mean, we were attracted there. We did go to Mass there and a couple other places as we were looking for places to live and buy our house and all that. There was something there. It was beautiful. There was a welcoming spirit. There was a joy there. It was good. And you know what? They did do some coffee and donuts, and that's really nice. And we did, you know, like it there. And some of the other parishes we went to as we were looking at where to live, and we wanted to live fairly close to a parish, did feel a little more stuffy or a little more distant. And also, I'll hand it to them. It was a place of some welcoming and vibrancy and hospitality. Well, then we moved there, and we felt called to be there. We're happy to be there, and I still am very happy to be there to this day. But what happened was, you know, we had a little ministry background. People, you know, we had degrees and some experience and things, and so, you know, people find out, right? We're Catholics, and we have leadership potential, and so pretty soon we're invited onto committees. And there's an evangelization committee, and you know, I work in evangelization and whatnot, so we get these invitations. And every time we kind of show up, there's people on staff taking a big interest in us, you know, kind of, because they're inviting us. Oh, well, you know, we have this young adult room. I wonder if you guys have some ideas about this. And oh, well, you know, we have this committee, and we're looking for parish, you know, council members, and there's this real interest, and you know, we're kind of like, well, I don't know, I didn't want to jump on all these committees, but felt like maybe this is some of the way in to love this community. So kind of start doing a little bit of that stuff. But over time, what became very clear, well, first of all, here's what never happened. No one asked us any questions about our lives. No one invited us to their home, shared a meal with us. They didn't know us at all. And we have some credentials. Great. I'm glad that we had some credentials. Big deal, right? They didn't really know us. And also, and Jackie and I started, you know, it was kind of like not the best discernment, but okay, we'll join these committees or just try one out. And I tell you how thin the sense of community was there. Again, not in judgment, but just let's call a spade. No matter how hard we tried to steer the conversation sometimes to sharing life, to reflecting on Scripture together, to talking about Jesus in our lives and how we might help others to encounter Him, it just never seemed to get past, you know, what picture of baby Jesus, I'm not kidding, what picture of baby Jesus should be on our bulletin at, you know, a Christmas Mass? Which one will be the most welcoming for people? You know, and it's just not exactly the conversation we're going to have. Even more ironically, not only are we kind of struggling to kind of turn the conversations towards what all of you are talking about here this weekend. This is 6 or 7 years ago. Not only that, but also we started noticing this. And eventually Jackie and I just said, you know what, we kind of wrote it out a little bit on those committees that weren't going anywhere. And we said, let's just do what we know we're called to do. And let's just do what we want to do. And we started just investing in people. And we just started doing it. No one even knew we were doing it, you know? Invite this person over, meet them. We had little kids, so it's really easy to use them as an excuse to go connect with other families that have kids. Oh, your kids are really cute, you know? And go talk to them. Soccer fields, you know, play dates. Just you know, putting ourselves out there inviting. If you were at Michael and Tasha's workshop, they talked a lot about doing this as well. And you know, learning half of it from them, going, oh, that's a great idea. We want to do that. Inspired by our friends, we want to do that. And we start getting to know people. And we start getting to know their names and their stories. And this weird mix of, we're watching the parish chase down a lot of the people that we're getting to know. and throwing leadership opportunities at them. And one by one, they're often, A, turning people off because they're not really getting to know them, and, or B, throwing leadership opportunities at people that have no business being in leadership right now. Some people looked like they had it all together, right? This one guy that I got to know, he's a good-looking, you know, great guy, leader in his community, coach, you know, he's a successful guy, travels a lot for business, and they just kept trying to get him to lead. And after 2 years of having beers with this guy and coffee and connecting and sharing our stories, he told me what was really going on in his life. And it's some of the darkest stuff I've ever heard, even in movies. I mean, I didn't think this stuff happened in this little suburb where I live. Deep addictions, unfaithfulness, I mean, just wrapped with serious stuff. And not that everybody's doing that, but it's just a contrast. Another guy that I was getting to know through friendship had just entered the church last year through RCIA, and now they're grabbing him to try to make him a sponsor for other people, because who's going to be a sponsor? Well, someone who just went through RCIA. They're the only one we can get, you know, because they had a good experience. Turns out this guy's got 1 foot out the door of the Catholic Church. Sadly, now he has 2 feet out. He's gone. But they didn't know that he was wrestling with these questions after he was received in. And that he was flirting with this evangelical church and getting enamored by a lot of great stuff there. And as I walked with him through, and I see the disconnect between knowing these people, and God bless them, but the structures of the parish, not that interested, not going there. And so it's this shell. So I would say there's a thick sense of hospitality, a thick, rich, Catholic sense of what hospitality really means. But in order to get at that thick sense, we need that other word that's in the title of this workshop, which is relationship. Relationship is the key to understanding the fullness of what a culture of hospitality is really all about. So it's just a very ironic, sort of painful situation to be getting to know real people, to be opening life and sharing life and faith and prayer with a lot of individuals, and watching the parish try so hard, but just not being that interested. And we tried, you know, we share, and they kind of like our stories and see what's happening, and we'd get an inroad here, and then bureaucracy and complication, and no, we can't do that, we can't do that, we can't do that. And the parish didn't want to get messy enough. Because programs are clean, programs are predictable, programs are easy to count and measure, and all of that. And relationships are none of that. Relationships are messy. As Pope Francis says, right, and you heard it quoted, I prefer a church that's bruised and dirty and out because it's been out in the streets, as opposed to one that's getting sick on our own germs. You know, when you stay in the same room together, you just get all sick on each other's germs. And I experienced a real palpable sense of that. So just want to share, you know, guide you through some reflections today, like I said, that hopefully you can continue to unpack. But I want to lay some foundations here. Some of them a little more theoretical, and then I want to get as practical as I can. So how can we, you know, conceptualize this and press in? Building block number one is just, it's been said already, but our vocation is to evangelize. You can, if you get the handout, you can read some of the text there. I'm not going to read them to you. But I've also been moved by the church's use of the word apostolate. To be an apostle is to be sent out, right? And every lay person, by their baptism, is called to be an apostle, is to be sent. Same thing, missionary, disciple, all of that, right? What's so cool is that the church says this, that, you know, the whole reason for the church's existence is to evangelize, as Michael said, to make disciples of all nations. And every individual person is called to share in that message and in that vocation. It talks about the individual apostolate. The individual, the whole, it says this in one of the Vatican documents, the individual apostolate is the origin and condition of the whole lay apostolate, even of the organized type. That means is when we organize ourselves and we have programs and structures, and you know, you might run a number of good things, right? But if it's not animated ultimately by individuals, living an individual apostolate, it's not going to animate the structures. Okay? And Pope John Paul II, St. John Paul II, kind of takes that, and he takes that exact quote, and he puts his own spin on it. And he says this in Christa Fidelis Laici, number 28. He says, each member of the lay faithful should always be fully aware of being a member of the church, yet entrusted with a unique task, which cannot be done by another, and which is to be fulfilled for the good of all. A unique task. It cannot be done by another, because as individuals, we each have an individual apostolate. We're not talking about individualism and everybody just doing their own thing, disconnected from the whole. We're talking about a unique task. When you think of that, don't just think of some task like, there's a lot of good tasks to do. I think there's good grounds to look at it in terms of people. There are specific individuals with names and faces, like my buddy who traveled for work, who was mired in bondage. And it was only me who he shared that with. I feel the sacredness of that. That's holy ground. You want to take off your shoes like Moses when someone lets you into that space. And all of us have people, and all of us are sort of, we're on the way, we're under construction, we're not there yet, we're not perfectly arrived and holy and all the way there yet. Doesn't matter. God's been using imperfect, on the way, broken, incomplete people since day one, right? Everyone who's called by God. Well, what about me? Wait, I can't speak very well. I'm too young. Wait, don't you have the wrong person? It's like God's MO. He loves that. He loves to use us in His work. And so I think that's building block number one. That our identity is to be, the hands and the feet of Christ. Even as we continue to be saved by Christ, He calls us individually to some people in our lives are only going to hear, the gospel through us. We're only going to have a listening ear through your listening ear. Only going to have a shoulder to cry on, or whatever it is, through you. That's a powerful idea. And the church fully embraces it and calls us to it. So a thick sense of a culture, a thick sense of hospitality, is that there be individuals who are deeply aware that their vocation, their deepest identity, even as they're continually being saved by Christ, is to be on mission. There's also a distinctively secular character to the laity. So love that. The Vatican documents talk about the secular character, because laity are going to get into the nooks and crannies of the world where priests aren't and religious aren't. Right? So laity can really smell like the sheep, because they are the sheep. And can get into all the nooks and crannies and be specialists in their own little corners of the world. All right, so just another building block. Mission territory then. Where do we go out on mission? And just a really simple point here. We go out on mission everywhere. Our parishes are mission territory. We also don't want to forget about our neighbors, those that don't come to church, right? So, Lord, pray about this. Who is the Lord? Who's that person? Right? I was very blessed by hearing someone today at lunch say, I'm really inspired by this conference so far. Not as he was saying, not just as it relates to like the parish and like teams and things like that, but just in my personal life. And I thought, that's a great sign. How many of you are parish professors? How many of you work in a parish or the diocese? Okay? Okay, so most of you don't. When I speak to parish workers a lot, it's especially, sometimes so it's hard not to take off that lens, right? We want to do everything for our jobs and everything. But how can we inspire the lay apostolate in others if we're not reflecting primarily on what the Lord wants to do in us, through us, just as me? Not as the parish staff, but just as me, right? Okay. So, parishes are mission territory. In the pews, people, we look like we have it all together. But like Mike said, everyone has a story. And, you know, as we get to know people's stories, we enter into that sacred space. That's a building block for a culture of relationship and hospitality. All right, third building block. I want to illustrate this one. I'm going to get into the how a little bit. Like, okay, how do we do this? I want to give you an illustration that I saw something like this about 25 years ago. How old am I? Maybe 20 years ago. And I was in college, okay? So it was 20 years ago. And there's something about an image that sticks sometimes more than others. There's a lot of words, right? And I just keep coming back to this. So I need a volunteer, a brave volunteer, just to come up here. You don't even have to talk much or at all. Come on up. Thank you. All right. What's your name? Heather. Heather. Thank you. All right. So Heather, I'm just going to give you a few things here. Just hold on to them as much as you can. Okay, there's that. Come on now. Come on. That's not acceptable. Okay, go. That one. Put that back. Okay, that didn't work. Okay, a little more. Okay. And, all right, Heather. There, catch that. Okay. Got it? Almost. Okay, she's trying hard. She's really trying to hang on. Can't do it. Can't do it. All right, yeah, okay. There. You're failing. This is not working. Hey, good job. All right. Okay. All right, a little more. Aren't you? Okay. Why isn't she getting it? Why isn't she getting, okay, you know, Jesus loves you. Mary is the mother of God. That means that, okay, Jesus is divine and human. Okay, why don't you care? What? Right, the good news. All right, okay, you get the idea. Thank you, Heather. Good job. Now we did this. Okay, and then we just okay. All right, now we're doing better, right? Now we can maybe we can talk about this blue balloon. Okay. All right, that's it. That's all we need. Thank you. Good job. You did great. Good job. All five. Yeah, you can keep it if you want. That image stuck with me. When I was a camp counselor, our camp director did something like that with us. Because we were working with kids, he wanted to illustrate that, you know, if a kid might, you know, step out of line or do something, you know, and we might, you know, come in there with a correction. Or, you know, we might try to give a kid some kind of directive or, you know, correction, like I said. And a lot of times it just bounces off, right? Because in a moment where that kid acted out or whatever, there's usually a reason, right? And he's carrying a lot of things. And the only way to really connect with that kid is to kind of, you know, get down to a level and ask him some questions. Hey, how you doing? What just went on there? You know, and that's in terms of a conflict resolution situation. But in that's how I learned it. And so as he or she shares a little bit of what's going on or gets something off his chest, might be putting these balloons down a little bit. They're not going away. He's going to pick them back up again. You know, maybe some of them will just dissipate because they weren't big deals. Some of them are other things that might be going on at home. You know, big things that a kid is carrying. But even in that moment of connection and talking and listening and, you know, compassion and empathy, there might open up a space to have more of a dialogue, right? Or to maybe, you know, help them out in a way that they actually need helping out. And I just think of that, I think of that illustration all the time when I hear what this conference is about, relationships. I think it so much applies more than just kids at camp or something, or conflict resolution, right? Like Mike said, everybody's carrying things, right? Silent struggles that they're not telling us, right? And we're not trying to pry into these weird, you know, tell me everything, you know. No. we have to be very careful and reverent towards human beings. I don't care, how much theology we know, or what school of thought we come with, or what favorite, approach. Every human has a need to be cared for. And if that balloon illustration just gives you an image of, instead of trying to throw more stuff at people before, my parish, again, I'm picking on them pretty bad, I've done this as much as anyone in my earlier days of ministry as well. But throwing things at people and asking, why isn't it sticking? Why isn't the religious education sticking that I'm trying to give them? Why isn't the leadership, the volunteers, the program that we're trying to get go, why isn't it sticking? Why aren't they coming? Why all that? And, well, because it's a little bit like what Heather, right? What Heather just experienced there. And it's a bit like I felt when I came to this parish, and they kept throwing opportunities at me, opportunities that I was honored to, I wanted to serve in these ways. But it just was thin. It could never get anywhere until real relationships started to happen. So relationships, so here's the R's. I have 3 R's, for those of you who do have a handout, that I left blank for you. First word is receptivity. First of all, that right there. How do we evangelize? Well, we have to pay attention to receptivity. It's not just about what are we giving. Pay attention to receptivity. Receptivity requires relationship. Receptivity requires relationship. Without a relationship, there's not going to be receptivity to the charisma, to the gospel, to our faith stories. We have to build trust, right? And that, I'm just praising God. I'm sitting in these general sessions, taking so many notes at how beautifully and powerfully that message is coming through. It's like the Spirit is breathing this message across the church. And we're waking up, as I said in the last version, some of these things that we're talking about, it just sounds like psychological. It sounds very human. It sounds like not very theological. Well, we can get theological, we can make, this is very theological. We are made in the image of a triune God who is relationship, right? We are made for relationships. It's very theological. But sometimes when you get into the practicality of this stuff, it's like, oh, I just need to learn how to ask better questions? Wow, that seems like it's so close, I like to say, it's kind of like right here. You just can't see it. And something's right here on my glasses. I can't see this little bar in my glasses. I have to take it off. Now I can see it, but I can't see that. But it's right there. And a lot of times in evangelization, creating a culture. How do we create a culture? Well, a lot of the things we can do better with, maybe we're already doing, don't even know, but if we took a look at it and said, this is really important right there. And if this isn't there, my glasses fall off and I can't even use them. So this is really important stuff right there. That's the excitement of some of this stuff. We don't need to go study 3 years of a graduate program to do this. You can go tonight. I challenge you. Tonight. Don't think about evangelizing. Don't think about, oh, who's far off and lost. Ask a good question of someone in your life today, tonight, tomorrow. That's so practical. I'm actually kind of bad at this. So I've learned it. Michael's, drilled it in a million times in my life, like hearing him speak and all that. And I've learned it through my wife. I have to, when I go to a function, I have to sometimes sit and think, what questions can I ask people? Because I'm just not that, it just doesn't come as naturally to me. But I can do it. Take a little time. Reflect, right? So asking good questions. Receptivity requires relationship. Augustine said it this way, the single desire that dominated my search for delight, he says, is simply to love and to be loved. So that's how we share those balloons, and that's how we enter into that sacred space. St. Paul in 1 Thessalonians 2:8, with such affection for you, we were determined to share with you not only the gospel of God. He preached the gospel, and he shared the gospel, right? but with such affection for you, we were determined not only to share with you the gospel of God, but our very selves as well. So dearly beloved had you become to us, sharing yourself. And that's where parish workers, just to pick on you a little bit more, this is gonna get confusing. Do you expense that dinner or not? I don't know. Was that work time or not? Do you count that one towards your 40 or 50 or whatever hours? I don't know. Pray about it. Ask Jesus. Talk to, I don't know. Talk to the pastor. You know, whose credit card are you using to pay for that job? You know, I don't know, because we can't contain our mission to 40 hours a week, right? This is life. This is life. We also can't drive ourselves into the ground and save the world, right? So also, maybe another good message too, and all this inspiring stuff, go meet all these people, love all these people, don't hear it that way either. 3 ways you know that, 3 things to know if you're doing too much. You know, some of you need to like hear the message and get out of your comfort zone and go. Some of you might need to hear something else too. If your prayer suffers, if your marriage or the closest relationships that you're in are suffering, if your work suffers, right? You might need to pour into a few. And not, that's the nature of this though, right? And this is why it's slow, it's messy, and you can't count it, and it won't feel productive. Right? Because, well, it's not fast enough. We want faster, measurable growth. It's not the way of the Lord. He wants faithfulness and authenticity. And I just love that that's been the keynote of this whole conference. All right, so, and Pope Francis loves the messiness of that. You know, I want a mess, he says. I want to see the church get closer to the people. I want to get rid of this closing off within ourselves. All right. Another little image for this relationship stuff. And I want to try to get practical, and we can hear from you too. A great image that I draw from an author that I enjoy named Parker Palmer. Talks about the human soul is like a wild animal in 2 ways. The human soul is like a wild animal in 2 ways. It's really resilient and strong. Think about the things that humans have endured, right? Concentration camps and some of the virtue and love and sacrifice and what it takes to, you know, squelch the human spirit and soul. Like, it's amazingly strong. We are, you know, we are more magnificent, each one of us, than the galaxies and the biggest mountain and the Grand Canyon. It's amazing. God's crowning creation is every single person in this room. Awesome. The human soul is strong and beautiful, like a wild animal. But it's also shy, right? A wild animal is shy, because it's kind of a dangerous world out there. And this side of the kingdom, this side of the fullness of the kingdom, it's a dangerous world out there. So our souls are shy. We've been wounded. Everybody has been hurt. And so if you want to see a wild animal, you don't just go crashing through the woods and, come on, everybody, get together, let's, you know, sing a song, and, you know, let's do this, and come on, youth kids that we're doing hip and trendy music, you know, let's sing and dance, and, you know, why aren't they loving this, right? Or whatever it is, right? We don't just go crashing through the woods. No, you gotta, if you're gonna see a wild animal, you gotta go hang out there for a while. You gotta sit in some quiet stillness. And maybe the thing you seek will make an appearance. And my buddy, you know, after 2 years of hanging out and you know, going a little deeper, but staying kind of at the surface and waiting, that night at Ray and Doc's in Greendale, Wisconsin, the soul came out. And it's so real, it's so raw, it's so beautiful, it's so wounded. And maybe not everybody's that dramatic, but we all are carrying things, like we said. So we want to become experts in this. And maybe it's only with one person, right? We start with one. That's the beauty of it. We can't do it with 2 if we can't do it with 1, right? Now this doesn't sound very practical, because like we want our churches to have a movement. We want this culture to spread. Is there any other way? Is there any other way than just doing it? and praying for the Lord to do it in us. What are some thoughts you have, or comments or questions? Let me just pause and get a little bit of a, add to it before we move on. I don't have a specific question, but just any reactions that anyone has. Yes?
When you went through your parish and saw what you saw, you made a change within yourself. Were you able to did other people see the change you made in yourself in the parish, or was there anything that happened that made the change in the parish life?
Yeah, great question. So you didn't hear it, in my story, we started changing ourselves. Did that lead to anything at the parish? Did it start to spread? Yes, slowly. So, to kind of continue the story. So Jackie and I just started doing what we know how to do, and inviting people over, getting to know them, no agenda, investing in relationships, building friendships. We started some small groups, right? I lead a men's group that meets on Friday mornings. She leads a women's group, meets on Tuesday nights, and that was the first sort of organized expression, with just some small groups. And as we invested in these relationships, it's been a little bit of movement there. Those haven't blown up and been huge. We haven't always tried to mechanize this or train for others, because we're also having babies, and remember the whole you're doing too much thing. So Michael and Tasha had 50 people over to the dinner in the first year, and I can't do that, So we had 3, and then we're good for a while. So everybody has their limits. They got to pray about that, right? So we started some small groups, and for a while that was just our apostolate, and but then little by little, and we get to know the staff, the parish, and different people, and there's been opportunities here to serve and help and do that, but only until about 4 years later for us. It's just here, it's just one place. Right now, we're about so my organization that I work for, the Evangelical Catholic, we're actually starting an official relationship with my parish on July 1st in a couple weeks, and I'm going to be their coach. And we're going to do consulting and training and actually build this into the structure of what they do. And I'm very excited about that. And it took about 2 or 3 years of just doing it without looking like the guy who's trying to sell some process or had all the answers, but just, didn't feel the open door to really, pursue that. And so now, regardless of that contract, but there's more and more staff started to see this and are drawn to it. And they didn't just see it from us, they knew it from their own background and other experiences. But the fruits are beautiful and self-evident, and it's not whatever people are afraid of. Typically, people in church world get in all these camps, and what about this? Are you conservative, are you liberal, are you this, are you that? And I think some time is needed sometimes to everybody just to realize we're just being human, being Christian, being Catholic, and loving on each other. And so there's some movement now that I'm very excited about, just to fill that story in. But for us, it felt like kind of being in the desert for a little while. But at the same time, this is, what else should we do? What else should we do? Move to another parish? Change? Bounce around until we land in the perfect spot? No. There's a lot to like there. But in terms of this stuff, we had to just go out and do it. And maybe that's you. So wherever you are, right? Some college students in the room, wherever you are. It's one of the most practical things you can do. Is just pray, Lord, who is it? Start with one. Start with one. Who can I invest in? And maybe, I was getting a little ahead of myself into the practicality of it. That's good. Maybe it's just, if you're married, maybe it's your spouse. How can you be a better listener and better conversation partner, out there if it's something that you really could improve on at home as well, right? And we're not going to wait till we're perfect, because it's not going to happen, right? So it's not about that. Or parents or whatever, right? It's not about mastering this, but it's about learning to grow in relationship. As we learn to grow in one relationship, we start to, it's like learning languages, right? You learn one, and people say that it gets easier to learn more, right? It's the same basic stuff. We're made for this. We're made. All right. Any other comments, questions? Yes?
How do you do that
Yeah, so your question, you've been in your parish for a while, you know some people, some don't. Where do I start? That's a great question. And I would say this. Pope Francis says this, we achieve fulfillment when our hearts are filled with faces and names. I would pray into, Lord, who can I invest in? Who do you want me to invest in? And what do I mean by invest in? Well, ask the Lord that question. I know this sounds like kind of vague. I think that's true. Because the Lord needs to fill that in for you. And I don't know. But that's kind of the only thing I know. Is to say, bring it to prayer. Is there someone in your life that you can accompany more intentionally by everything you've been hearing? Winning, listening better, asking more questions, serving more diligently, interceding for this person. As the Lord brings faces and names to your heart, get organized with the way you intercede for this person, right? And whatever that means. So if it means go out to lunch, just no agenda, ask how they're doing. And ask at the end of this question, at the end of that conversation, say, hey, how can I pray for you? We don't ask that question enough, and people love to answer that question. And they'll share you some of that soul, some of that hidden soul will come out. Because it is hard to get past the surface, right? We know people, you're right. We know people in parishes. We see each other a lot. We do a lot of surface level conversations. But as you pray, and that's why prayer is important, because if we all just run around like it's some technique, it's going to get weird real quick. You know, people are going to sniff out fakeness. Like, oh, I don't want to go to that parish. They try to be really relational there. You know, like there's a way to make it all fake. So it's not a technique. That's why prayer can bring us to that deep place of that personal apostolate. Lord, who can I invest in? And that's a lens. What we're sharing here is a lens, like Mike said. And it's as you put that on, you bring that to prayer. The lens not only of my growth, but of the Lord using me in someone else's life. And don't listen to that voice that says that's arrogant. If you ever think that, oh, who are you? Who am I? You know, I don't want to be some arrogant. Well, that's just a false humility. Crucify that, and then have the Lord, raise up the genuine concern. He gives us His compassionate heart. So maybe it's, I would find the one, and then start doing it. Start doing all the notes you took down this week. That'll tell you what to do. So thanks for the question, and I know I'm kind of circling around the same answers. But to whom else would we go than to the Lord and to people? And as we do that more individually, it won't count as parish service, but it'll make a difference. And if you find 2 or 3 others that are interested in the same thing, and you start getting together, here's the other thing I would do. Not only start doing it as an individual, but if you find a few others who have the same lens and can accompany you in the doing of this, right? How's it going for you? What discouragements, what joys, right? And walk with those people. Start praying together for those people that you're accompanying. Start praying together for your own needs. Pray together. Use your own words. You've got yourself an unofficial little evangelization team, but don't call yourselves that, and then you'll screw it up and get all weird. Right? Just start doing it. And find anyone else who wants to do it and that connects with you at all, and just lean in together. It's the most practical advice I can give. Other thoughts, questions, comments?
A few years ago, I went to a diocesan meeting, a corporate meeting, and when I got to the church and parked my car, a gentleman came across the street, shook my hand, said, "Thank you for coming. When you go inside, sign which is right in front of you, the bathrooms to the right, the cookies to the left, help yourself." I thought I was at a Protestant church. Just don't do that. So when you talk about it taking a while to plant that seed and let it grow, it's a lengthy process.
Yeah.
And it just was, I was stuck really, because that's just not our way.
Right, and let's, can we change that, like, amen. Amen. It shouldn't be a Protestant thing to be nice to people. Oh, she said basically she had a great experience of being welcomed into a church and told where to go, and here you go, hospitality, like in the best sense. And she said it was so foreign to her because she's only ever seen that in Protestant churches, you know. And she's a cradle Catholic. Yeah, so you know and I don't mean to denigrate what I would call the thinner sense of hospitality. It's actually really important. That's a good start. Like, have the cookies, have the, you know, let's have some people out welcoming people. But if it's not in our DNA to do the thick stuff, if we're not aware of the thick sense of hospitality, and this is what St. Benedict called it, right? The great Benedictine tradition, hospitality. Every guest that enters is Christ. To treat every guest as Christ. That's the definition of the thickest sense of hospitality, right? So with the thick sense growing and in place and with more people whose heart is beating with the Lord for people and learning to enter that sacred space and learn how to, you know, patiently but persistently pursue the shy soul that we might accompany one another. As we learn to do that a little more, then those dinner moments of you know, the cookies and the coffee. That's why, you know what? That's why I think we think the coffee does it. Because at the place where it works, this doesn't just happen. There was prayer in basements. No one saw it. Just start praying in a basement. Just do it. Just get messy. Just start praying in a basement. I don't know why a basement, or an upper room. It's just neat. It's just like no TV screens, no lyric books, no flyers to come join us in our... No, just find 2 or 3 others and just pray. And invite some others to do it. And as you share what you're learning here and pressing into what the Holy Spirit is doing with you, find other kindred souls. Anyway, that's the thick stuff. Is that thick sense of culture? That's where culture, right? So a culture is caught more than taught. You can't just teach a culture. You have to embody it. You have to do it. You have to look a little weird. And then someone else starts doing it. And then it becomes less weird. So that's the stuff of culture. But when we have, so in those Protestant communities or whatever, I guarantee you that was not just a, oh, let's have some coffee. Oh yeah, that sounds like a good idea. No, there was like 100 hours or 200 hours of people pressing into Scripture and prayer and life stories and walking with each other and sharing each other's burdens and praying for one another. And those people are those that are saying, oh, can I show you where the bathroom is? And their heart is beating with Christ for you, and they're holding back because they don't want to freak you out, but there's thickness there. And we've got the thickest stuff ever in the sacraments. So if we can thicken our relationships, we've got it all. We've got what everybody's looking for. But that's the lesson for us in this century, you know, in this time in the church, is to thicken our experience of community. I'm just going to check my time. Other comments, questions? We have about 10 minutes left. I'll give you a few more things here, but this is, and I really enjoy the feedback here. Yes?
How do you sort of realize or change things? You're having lunch with a friend and you guys have been comparing some notes on how things going on, and as you look at them and you say, well, you know, I pray and I do this. What do you do? And all of a sudden you see a shield kind of come on their eyes.
Yeah.
How do you work around that?
Yeah, that's a great question. When you're talking to someone and maybe you bring up a spiritual topic and they just kind of shut down, right? The soul went back into hiding. Maybe you thought you had a little opportunity here, and you know what? I feel like I do it wrong all the time. This is part of the messiness of it. I have felt like I've said the wrong thing, asked the wrong question a lot. And God is so gracious. I think He honors the attempt so much. You know what you do then? You realize that. You take that back into prayer. Okay, push a little hard. I asked the guy the other day, you know, if he'd want to go to confession, and he just shut down. And I put in some serious relational trust. He opened up to me all about his marriage falling apart, and like we've been building trust. And I thought he was a stronger believer than he was, and it kind of came out in the middle of the conversation. And I it's like, oh, he's not. He don't want to talk about that right now. And I had to back off a little bit. But you know what? The Lord works through that too. I still pray for him. I still talk with him. You know, you shift and adjust and all that. Just, Lord, how can I love him? Now I know this. Now I know this. That didn't really work. Okay, just keep loving. Keep loving. I don't know. That's a great question. I mean, in a 1 hour workshop too, I mean, we're just scratching the surface, right? Sherry Waddell has great stuff on the thresholds, the 5 thresholds of conversion. And she's got trainings out on how to walk with people at various stages of those thresholds and some common do's and don'ts, right? So this isn't like a training for how to do all that. There's great stuff there. At the EC, we partner with parishes to help form a team that goes through various trainings to help, you know, learn these skills of accompaniment and mentoring, you know, little by little. So there's ways, you know, your diocese here, you know, I'm partial because I know the Haver camps. I know they're doing a lot with you know, various trainings at various levels to help us get better at this, because it's an ongoing quest. So I don't know, and yet that question is the right question. And then I think as we ask that and share that with those couple friends that are asking the same questions, that's the good stuff. Let's ask those questions together. Okay, yes, others. There are a couple other hands that shot up. Yeah.
What I thought when you mentioned that, you know, that case at that point and then back off, the image that came to my mind was that there's a seed that came out.
Yeah, right, and yeah, exactly. I shouldn't say, I should say I feel like sometimes I do it wrong, but that's not necessarily a sense of it was wrong to have asked that question, right? A seed can be planted, and in those,
you know, the ground was broken just a bit there.
Yeah.
A little water was dropped.
That's right. That's right. And you never know when that's going to come back around and say, hey, you know, I kind of shut you down when you asked me that question, but you know, that's happened, right? There's a guy that I've been that I invested in a little bit and got to know somewhat, but then, you know, he's busy and all that. He's on my list for my small group, and 4 years he's not come. But I always, every year, I'm like, hey, you still want to be on the reminders list? Because, you know, it's okay, you know, no pressure either way. And he's like, yeah, no, I'll keep me on there, you know. And after 4 years, he finally came like 3 weeks ago. And he loved it. He shared beautifully. He's like deepening the experience of everybody else there. And I'm so glad that 4 years ago, I was able to connect with them and plant a seed. And now, there's fruit, at least in this relationship. I'm sure there's fruit in his life in other ways as well. Okay, a couple more, and then I'll race through a couple more things. Good. Yeah.
Just a comment we had yesterday in one of the meetings about hearing and listening, and how any relationship you're building, if you really listen to what things that sometimes it's the smallest things. Sometimes it's just,
That's right.
hey, I'm going to read this newspaper, I know you'll get it, if you'd like to read it. It's kind of just nourishing that seed that's already been planted.
Yeah, the small things, listening well. You know, noticing the details. Notice details. Notice details. Keep a journal. Keep a journal. It's the other thing, practical tip for relational ministry. Write it down. You're going to forget. You're going to forget some of the stuff that you wish you'd remember. Michael mentioned, he said, you know, I think it was you. Someone came back to church the next week and they remembered my name. I forget names like crazy. I'm horrible with names. But I can write it down. And if I go home and review my notes a little bit and lift that person up in prayer, I'll remember. Or at least there's a much better chance, right? Take notes. Be intentional. Love thinks ahead. Love takes the first step. Love is pursuing, right? So, if you don't have the greatest memory in the world, write things down. Bring them to prayer. That's some of the most practical stuff. Thank you for sharing that. All right, so, yeah, if I could throw a couple words at you, a couple things. I love this. Recently, just been learning a little bit from some psychology kind of lenses, but Michael mentioned it in his workshop, the word attunement. To tune in. Attunement. It means this, I looked it up. It means being aware of and responsive to another. Aware of and responsive to another. You know where actually it starts? This is very practical. It doesn't feel like it is, but it actually is. A lot of us need to be more attuned to ourselves. Being aware of and responsive to your body, your emotions, your thoughts, your feelings. Also attunement, tuning in, being aware of and responsive to God. Prayer, obviously, essential. But are we taking that time to slow down? We need it for ourselves. So both of those wrapped up in prayer, right? So that's the foundation, is to tune in to God and to ourselves, and to get some accompaniment in doing that. We're not these perfect all-stars that just get that all and can go give, give, give. Spiritual director, spiritual friend, spiritual companion, someone to share. You need someone else to help tune into you. All right? This is the culture that's been missing in our Catholic experience too often. Too often. Then, also, as we strengthen that foundation, we can engage others, as we said. Who are you called to tune into, aware of, and responsive to? All right? So we're going to talk about, as you're able to go out, in whatever ways are natural to you, notice people, ask questions, invite someone over, go deeper, take a friendship to another level. Ask them how you can pray for them. Practice growing in your conversational skills. There's a TED Talk. If I were doing a longer workshop, I would just do all this with you. But I'm not, so I'm going to point you to a TED Talk called How to Have a Better Conversation. It's really good, 10 tips or something like that. It's really good. 20-minute little talk, How to Have a Better Conversation. It's great stuff. It's great stuff. It's one of these things that's right here that makes all of us better friends, better listeners, better. The most precious gift you can give someone. Remember you started out with that? Nicky Gumbel said this. He made Alpha. If you know Alpha, that program, it's really a great video series. Nicky Gumbel said, the most precious gift you can give someone is the gift of your time and attention. The gift of your time and attention. And I think that is giving love and giving Jesus, because Jesus is incarnated in our eyes and our ears and our hands and our love and our hearts. So give people your time and attention. Remember the circle of influence. Remember this, another image, if you can, I said don't worry about all the big structures until, we're concerned with many things. Circles of concern are huge. We care about the world and environment and Russia we're afraid of certain things, or we don't know, right? All these big concerns. And that's important stuff. But what's my circle of influence? I can do little things. And when it comes to people, there's people with names and faces in our circles of influence. So focus on that. 1 before 2. 2 before 3. Not 100. I can't do anything with 100. I love my children. Elijah, Sam, Madeline, and Kate. I don't love my family. And just never tune in to each of my children. But we can do that. We can do this individually and communally. All right. And then a couple, just color of points. Pastors in the room, you are the father of a family. And actually, Katie said this morning too. Get to know your family as best you can. And hopefully the lay people take the initiative too and invite you over. But have coffee, get to know, ask them their stories. No agenda, just listen. I know you're busy. And it's one of the best investments of your time. It's one of the most irresponsible uses of your time it will feel like. Just like Jesus hanging out with people. That's one of the best. It'll deepen your priesthood if you're not already deeply connecting with your sheep. And as you do it, then you can get organized. I mean, we can organize our parishes. We can go somewhere with this. But as we do it in our lives and find a few others and basement prayer and sharing life stories, then we could say, well, maybe we could have let's reproduce this. Let's have a training group or a formation group that takes people through 20 weeks of this experience, and then, ask them to invite how they might spread this relational love of Jesus. You can get organized with that. But again, we can start tonight by asking a better question of someone we love. Right. All right. So, let's end with this. Mother Teresa, I don't agree with the big way of doing things. To us, what matters is an individual. To get to love the person, we must come into close contact with him. If we must wait till we get the numbers, then we will be lost in the numbers, and we will never be able to show that love and respect for the person. I believe in person to person. Every person is Christ for me. And since there is only one Jesus, there is only one person in the world for me at that moment. Lord Jesus, we ask for this heart, your heart. Lord, you saw people. You saw and you walked with, cared for people. The woman at the well, Zacchaeus, Bartimaeus, Nicodemus. Lord, you looked into people's eyes and you you drew out their stories. You asked questions. You inspired the likes of Mother Teresa to have such reverence for you in each person she encountered. Lord, we pray for the grace to make this message practical. Something I can't do for this room. I can only make this practical in my little circle of influence. Lord, I pray that you give me that grace, give everybody in the room that grace, Lord, we beg you. Give us the grace to make the themes of this conference and of this workshop practical, meaning that you would show us who to love and how to love. And that we would never doubt that these seeds of love are somehow not fast enough, not good enough, not structured enough. Lord, that will come if we serve you faithfully. Thank you for your Spirit blowing through this place, Lord, as we approach Pentecost and celebrate that this weekend. Lord, we say yes, Lord. Move through the upper room. Move through this place. Lord, that more souls would come out of hiding because of the love they experience from people here in this room. Holy Spirit, only you can do it. We're not the heroes of this story. Lord, it is such an honor to serve you and to love you and to love your people with your heart. Praise you, God. Ask for your blessings. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. God bless.